Howdy ho, fellow board game fans! It's time to talk about this week's news on our weekly news roundup for September 10th, 2018. We've got another new entry in the Pandemic series, Pandemic Fall of Rome. Like other Pandemic games, it's a cooperative title where you're going to be working together to fight things off, but in this version, it's not disease or germs. Instead, it is invading barbarians in the great empire of ancient Rome. You're still going to be going through the same basic gameplay motions, collecting different types of cards, pulling them together to stop different tribes from invading, but of course, there are some twists. For instance, in this one, there's actually going to be combat involved, and there is a unique set of combat dice you're going to be using. They haven't actually detailed how they work yet. That's going to be for a later preview in the future, but we know it's going to be something that's in there that'll be different. This is the third game, if I recall correctly, in what I believe they call their survival series, which started with Rising Tide is the latest one.
Yes,
and the
which is
first,
behind us.
It's right behind us on the shelf.
Iberia, I believe.
First one was Pandemic Iberia. And for each of these, the idea is that the designer Matt Leacock is working with a different designer, and they're set in a different area of the world.
You mean of Europe?
Yeah, you know, the world. So I guess the immediate question is, do we need another Pandemic game, and are you excited to play another Pandemic game?
I mean, I'm sure we'll play that at Gen Con whenever it comes up. I don't know if, I mean, we'll see if it's enough different. I did like the Cthulhu one. I mean, I'm always a fan of Lovecraftian stuff. I felt like it was interesting, but I do feel like I have so many that are just the same implementation. It's almost more like, I get it because it has Pandemic in the name a little. Yeah,
it's starting to feel a little bit like that. I like the idea that they're doing with these different designers and stuff like that. Combat dice, that sounds different, right?
I would like to see some of these mechanics and draw maybe in a legacy game. Because I do love the legacy ideas and spreading out and stuff. I think that's where it shined really well in terms of a new implementation. So if you actually take maybe the combat dice, or maybe there's now flooding happening, so you have to do germs and flooding or something.
Ooh, imagine.
I think that's where they can take these mechanics maybe and bring them into a Season 3 legacy.
Yeah, if Season 3 had Cthulhu in it and different regions of the world with these different mechanics, that's a cool idea. I'm into it. Z-Man Games, take note. That's what you should do. We called it here first.
Loyal Roll for Crit fans will remember I chose Infamous as one of my Kickstarter pickstarters for last week. Well, apparently Sony was watching as well, because they have told them that they cannot use that name for it infringes on their game Infamous, the classic PlayStation game. So they have finally changed their name to Maniacal. This is a interesting turn of events because honestly, besides the name, there really isn't much in common. Have we had anything like this before? Like where a board game was first changed? I know you gave an example with Cars, I think.
with Cars?
No, not my brother did. I told my brother, apparently, Ferrari tried to make a car called the F50, and Ford was like, that's our thing.
Well, we had the LCG incident where Upper Deck was calling Versus an LCG.
Right, but that was still in the same. That was all still in board game.
Right.
This would be like if a movie title, like Avatar, except they went after a board game called Avatar or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I can kind of see where they're coming from because they are both about superpowers and superheroes. I even said in our video, I was like, I'm surprised they could use that name. But
and that you can blame Jonathan now. He's the one who tipped them off.
I actually kind of think, honestly, Maniacal is a better name.
Actually, a lot of people agree.
Infamous, I think, is maybe because of the video game. It just sounds like I've heard that word so many times. Maniacal's a little different, a little cooler, but it is funny. And that promo card, I know you liked. What you have it? What is it exactly?
Yeah, the promo card in question, which is fantastic, is a new sort of evil target. It's infringing on corporate intellectual property rights. If you succeed, muhaha. And now we shall leech off the success and fame of this totally unrelated brand name. And if you fail, a tribunal of demonic lawyers chant words of death as your lovingly created product is cast upon a bonfire of bones and broken dreams.
Yikes. So I think they handled it well.
Yeah, no, I think that we're probably in their favor in this thing.
Yeah, they're going to get a bunch of press from this, honestly, like a bunch. So yeah, it's like they should thank Sony, really.
You mean you?
Yeah, thank me. You're welcome. Wrestling fans, look forward to more WWE content in your future because WizKids has announced that they have a licensing deal with the WWE to start making games based on that property. Specifically, they mentioned they're going to be using people from the WWE characters, I suppose you might say, in their games HeroClix and Dice Masters, as well as in brand new original board games and tabletop titles. This is going to include, of course, you're going to get your John Cena in there, The Rock. They even mentioned, old school mainstays like Steve Austin and etc. I'm not a wrestling guy myself, but I do think the idea of including these in Dice Masters when you could pair them up against Marvel characters or Yu-Gi-Oh characters is kind of hilarious.
I cannot wait to build a team. See, when someone build a team like, all right, I got my Summoning Skull, my John Cena, Batman, and Raphael from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
yeah, it's really good. I mean, I hope you get to play his theme music too at the same time when you do that.
You actually, instead of rolling the dice, you have to do their signature move on your opponent.
Yeah, of course, Gale Force 9 had that WWE game that we really liked, so it'll be interesting to see, because WizKids, they have some cool games, but I feel like they're definitely not known for their component quality in my mind.
Yeah, but I feel when it comes to something as big as WWE, this is going to be exciting. Plus, I guess when it comes to sport fans, they're just like, get the characters they really like. I think that's why that EA in particular has gotten away with loot boxes in their sport. So packs of cards with dice in them, or possibly blind figures to get your favorite wrestler. I mean, it seems like a no-brainer.
That's true. I do think they could definitely come up with some cool, quick party games using some of these mechanics. I mean, wrestling is I feel like that's an easy one-to-one translation in a lot of ways to a game.
I am curious, because this is now WizKids, you mentioned Gale Force 9. What is the wrestling board game overlap? Like, is there actually a very large overlap? Like,
good question.
Is it like it's like almost, it's like comics is.
Because I do feel like, there is that theatricality to wrestling, and that people, at least, WWE kind of wrestling. And I think same kinds of people who kind of get into the geekier habits, I do think there's a cross section of like jocks and nerds that both like wrestling, which is kind of cool. So yeah, we'll see when these games start coming out soon.
Earlier this week, archaeologists found a secret room in Vyborg Castle. This is a castle in Russia. Apparently, it's actually Swedish built and from the 13th century, but it's sort of traded hands between the Finnish, Swedish, and Russians. And as I said, Russians are the ones currently holding it. But in this chamber, they actually found a brick with an ancient board game carved into it. This is actually a game that they've known about. Apparently, that first originated as far back as Rome, going back to our pandemic fall of Rome, which has many names called like Mill or like Cowboy Checkers, in which you sort of try to line up your troops in rows of 3 to capture opponent pieces, and when they can't make any more, like literally they can't, like they have 2 pieces left, you won. So they said this is pretty interesting. First of all, a secret room that apparently no one knew about before. Apparently it was their board game closet.
I just have one question. Was this castle owned by the Mad King Ludwig?
You know what? Possibly. But this is definitely an interesting find, to see like these board games in these castles, because that shows sort of how long, as I said, this was from Rome. They've known and dated, and see it still around, so to speak, in a 13th century castle is very interesting. Especially in a sealed room, that would probably imply it's on the older end. It's not someone who brought it in at the end of the castle's life, probably more towards its beginning.
It is. I always find it really neat, the old history of board games, like Senet is that Egyptian one that's like credited as being one of the first board games. It's cool to see like ancient style board games, and it's like a stone tablet, it's like Flintstones,
It is, because just like watching, and I think thinking of literally evolution, like where did flight come in? You're wondering like, when did this mechanic come in? Did it really take until like the 20th century or 21st century for like cards to become a thing, or did we come up with lining pieces up way beforehand? And I think that's what's pretty cool about seeing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it turns out, drafting existed. It was an ancient game. Probably not.
But still, yeah, definitely something I think worth checking out, especially if you're a history buff. Because I thought it was, like we said, really cool, and be like, that was the cool thing they found. Like, the architects was like, we found a board game. I'm like, that's a cool thing they found? Well, I'm honored, but meanwhile, there's like a dead body, like the Holy Grail holding it, but everyone's ignoring it because there's the board games.
Indiana Jones is going to get this board game and put it in a museum.
Or Nicolas Cage.
Either one. Now let's just go over all the big new releases from the past week, and there are some big ones. There's the new Cosmic Encounter 42nd Anniversary Edition, similar to the original game, but with a few tweaks, different art style, and some different components. We've got Patchwork Express. If the original Patchwork wasn't quick enough and easy enough for you, now you've got the Express version. A Song of Ice and Fire miniatures game from CMON. That's a big deal if you're into the Song of Ice and Fire, which most people are. Grackles, which we just put out a review for last week, so very timely. You can go hear our thoughts on that elsewhere on the channel. Before There Were Stars, which is a brand new storytelling game that was a lot of buzz collecting at Gen Con this year. Then there's the new Smash Up expansion, Oops, You Did It Again, with some new factions that we really wanted to be in there. You got your Pickle Rick game, your brand new Rick and Morty game that comes in a Pickle Rick from Cryptozoic. There's also Ultimate Werewolf Legacy, because that's a thing that exists. And finally, there's the graphic novel Adventure series from Van Ryder Games, which we've also talked about in the show, that we are pretty big fans of, pretty excited about. Insane week of releases.
I think everything we were seeing at Gen Con's finally coming out now.
Yeah, I guess it takes about a month from Gen Con to when they can get them ready, I guess. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to even pick
They
one.
want to get before that holiday season.
Yeah,
By holiday season, I mean Halloween. Because as you all know, that's when you give out board games.
That's true. Hey, Ultimate Werewolf Legacy, that's a good Halloween game.
Actually, that's definitely, they want to make sure they're there before the Halloween parties.
Yeah, so, I mean, you got your pick. If there's one I would recommend, of course, Cosmic Encounter, if you don't have the original, I would say go for that. Otherwise, if you're a Smash Up guy, go for the Smash Up. Those graphic novel adventure games, like I said, if you're into the storytelling kind of games and RPGs, those are fantastic. They're really fun.
Honestly, I think if you have a large group, definitely the Werewolf Legacy. If you're a small group or one person alone, definitely the graphic novels.
Yeah, so much going on. Check out all those releases. That's going to be our news for the week. Definitely let us know if there was a game that came out we didn't talk about or a news item that we missed. That'd be really fun to hear from you about.
Of course, you can leave a comment right down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. That really help us out a lot. And we usually do a comic section every now and then from the Peanut Gallery. And we talk about your comments, so you may be read on the air.
Wouldn't that be nice? I think it would be.
And of course, we're in other places as well. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Check us out there as well.
Yeah. Until next time, though, my name is Jonathan.
And I'm Will.
And this was Roll for Crit News Roundup. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more awesome board game content from Roll for Crit.
And please leave a comment. We're lonely.